Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Season 11. And this episode was about Marvin Sapp. Let me go to say that this was a really good episode, and Marvin Sapp, I have to go to say, is probably one of the best remarkable artists that ever hit gospel music. I mean, this man has a powerful voice, and a voice of conviction, and a voice that has crossed the masses. And people have said that he's like the combination of a preacher and a singer. Like, he's a preacher and a singer molded into one. And one person even called him the Teddy Pendergrass of gospel music. And for 25 years, he has been a major force in gospel music. And pretty much, just to sum up everything that happened in this episode, he was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in 1967. His mother actually said that when the nun brought him, to her after he was born, she said that you just gave birth to a great man. Little do they know that how that prophecy will fulfill itself. And pretty much he had a traditional upbringing, him along with his three brothers. They grew up in True Life Missionary Baptist Church, and a lot of that I could relate to because I was actually raised in Durham, North Carolina, and I was also brought up in the church as well. The church I went to was called Gateway to Heaven United Holy Church of America, and I can say the church for me was really like a safe haven, for me and also many of the other people my age, who were growing up and were trying to stay away from some of the negative aspects, of the city, like, crime, drugs, and things of that nature. The church is like a safe haven for the community to strive to be the best that we can be. And it was great to see that his mother had that same idea, and that she, wanted her boys to grow up in the church to get away from all of that, to get away from all the negative aspect of growing up. Where, you can be victim to drugs, gangs, and things of that nature. The church is a place where you can actually keep your kids on the straight and narrow. And also, his father was a singer as well, and his father also had a commanding voice, and he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and become the kind of singer just like him. And it was discovered that at an early age he had a powerful voice, and he started doing like local talent shows, and he was also at that time was also doing some R&B and soul music as well as gospel. And his mother said that, look, you can't straddle the fence. You need to choose one. Do you want it to be all for God or all for the world? You have a decision to make. And he chose to sing gospel. And another part that they talked about in this episode, which really tickled me because I definitely did this as a kid, was that when he was a kid, he would play church. One of his passions was not only becoming a singer, but also being a minister, being a pastor. So he would like play the pastor, and all the other kids would actually be playing like they were a part of the church service. And they said that, and his mother said, it was crazy because they'd be in the backyard playing church, and the kids would literally be sitting there quiet and attentive. Like, it was kind of like mind-boggling that they literally would be at his command and would pay attention to everything he was saying. And he said that he only had one scripture, and he would preach on that scripture over and over again, and they would sit there attentively. And it really kind of struck a chord with me because growing up, we were in church all the time. I mean, our church was like one of the main pillars of the community, so we were always in church. There were always things going on throughout the week. There were things going on in the weekends, also church services. Sometimes, on church services, you had like maybe 2 or 3 services. You'd be in church all day, and it really kind of struggled with me because me and my friends, when we were growing up, and also me and my cousins, we would play church too. Like we would, and the church I kind of grew up was a Holiness Church, so we would pray. We would act like we were, we were praise dancing, and we would act like, we were doing altar call, and, my little brother would be playing communion. Like, we did all of that stuff. I mean, and it just goes to show how much the church has impacted you, that we would literally try to emulate what we saw in church. And I thought that was really cool. But when he was 9 years old, his parents divorced, and that divorce shook him at his core, and he ended up becoming rebellious. Like they said that at 12 he started smoking pot, by 16 he was drinking and popping pills, and by 18 he had tried cocaine. So he literally, his teen years, he really started to be a rebel, due to the fact that core foundation that he had with his mother and father was now different because they had divorced. And they also talked about, around this time, he started to develop, these seizures. And it turns out that he actually had epilepsy. And the medication definitely, wore him down. And they were saying that this condition was so bad that he would never sing again. But he said that he had determination and he willed it, and he had strong faith that, God was going to take epilepsy away from him, and that God was going to heal him, and that he wouldn't have to worry about the medicine or anything because God was going to cure him. And he said that it's been 30 years and I have not had a seizure. So it just goes to show you that, God performs miracles, and definitely that's what happened in this case. They also talk about, in 1990, he met Fred Hammond, who pretty much was one of the main members of the group Commission. And I definitely remember this song that Marvin Sapp sung lead on called King of Glory. There's this radio station in North Carolina called The Light, which plays nothing but gospel music. And Durham, North Carolina was somewhat like the Bible Belt, so you pretty much go in every corner you see a church. So the Light is very big down in Durham, North Carolina, and I definitely remember hearing King of Glory a lot on the radio around the early 90s, and definitely Fred Hammond is very big. So, and he was a part of the group, and they talked about how this was like Marvin's introduction, to gospel music and to, pretty much the gospel music industry. And Fred Hammond pretty much says that, look, I pretty much literally pushed him out there because I wanted the world to hear this great, phenomenal voice that he had. And Marvin Sapp even talked about how Fred was singing, and then this other guy, I think his name was Paul, who was a part of the group. He was also a great singer, and he said that when they were singing, people would be, cheering and everything and be clapping, but then when he was singing, you could hear a pin drop, and it's because people wanted to stop and hear, this great voice from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So that was cool. And it was also awesome that in one of the segments they talked about, Marvin Sapp talked about his mom, and that his mom was like the enforcer of the neighborhood, because he said there was one instance where there was like a pimp who was slapping around this prostitute. She pretty much went out there, I think, with her choir robe, and she put on a robe and, came out there with a broom. She had a few words with them, and they pretty much were saying, yes, ma'am, okay, and they went on about their business. So she said that, so he was like, yeah, mom was the enforcer. She didn't play, and she didn't take no crap off of nobody. So I thought that was really awesome. And they also talked about in 1992 he met the love of his life, Melinda Prince, who became his wife, and they had 3 children together. And then they talked about the album that Commission did, Matters of the Heart, and it was around this time that Fred Hammond left and went solo. And Marvin pretty much was pretty much due to the fact that Fred Hammond was one of the instrumental members of Commission. They continued on, but it wasn't the same without Fred. And then eventually, Marvin decided to strike out on his own. He created his own label, which he asked his wife to manage. And his wife was a professor, but she chose to stand behind her husband and help manage his career. And one of the first songs that he did was "Sweeter as the Days Go By," which was a song that was very important to him, because he said that when you have a close relationship with God, sweeter the days get down the line, because you have God on your side. You pretty much have better days, which is true. And pretty much that his solo project came out in '96, and pretty much I think his first his first album was his album by name, Marvin Sapp, and that's where "Sweet as the Days Go By" was on that album. Then his next album, "Grace and Mercy," which he had collaborated with Marvin Winans of the Winans Brothers. That album went to number 11 on the gospel charts. And then in 2004, he actually opened his church in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which he is actually pastor of. After his label folded, he ended up signing with Verity Records, and Verity Records has acts like Yolanda Adams and Kurt Franklin that are signed to this label. His album, The Exalted, reached number 2 on the gospel charts, and he had hits like Perfect Peace, and pretty much within this segment they were saying that sometimes your greatest success can come from your greatest pain, and that was true to Marvin Sapp in his case, because in 2006 his father had died, and before his father passed away, he had asked Marvin to do the eulogy at his funeral, which Marvin did, and then pretty much it was around this time that he did the album "Thirsty," which pretty much had the classic song that even resonates to this day, "Never Would Have Made It." And I actually remember when he performed it at the BET Awards, and he shut it down. And that it just really goes to show that how gospel music can transcend all other genres of music. Because you had hip hop artists, R&B artists, actors who were in the audience that night, and they were praising God, by him singing that song, and singing that song with such conviction and such emotion. And I remember that watching him perform that song, and I was just blown away. And that song "Well Never Would Have Made It" was number 1 for 47 weeks, and it also crossed over to the R&B charts. It was number 1. And what was so amazing about that song is that he wasn't saying Jesus, he wasn't saying God, he was saying you. And everyone can relate to that, because everyone knows who God is. Not everybody may not go to church, not everybody may be a Christian, but everybody knows the power of God. So I thought that was really great. And "Thirsty" ended up becoming a number 1 gospel album. And he at that time was saying that was going to be his last gospel album, but once it became a mainstream hit, and it blew everybody away, as well as him, because he wanted to focus more on being a pastor and focus more on his church, and plus he wanted to spend more time with his family. But obviously the music had a life of its own. And then he next did the album Here I Am, and the song The Best of Me, one of my favorites. Love that song. I mean, because that song, the first time I heard it, literally brought tears to my eyes. I mean, it's a really beautiful song. Like, you know, that you saw the best in me when everyone around could only see the worst in me. Just really showing how God sees the good in you when no one else can. And that album went, you know, #1 gospel, #1 R&B, and went also #2 on the pop charts, which pretty much made Marvin Sapp made him the top charting artist in Billboard history. You know, because he pretty much crossed genres. He pretty much crossed over into mainstream, you know, in a way that not any gospel artist has done before him. And I thought that was very astonishing, how he stayed true to gospel, but yet it still resonated, you know, in the mainstream stratus of music. And it was after, you know, Here I Am that, you know, it was discovered that his wife Melinda had stage 4 colon cancer, and she had actually passed away in 2010. And, you know, that was definitely one of the hardest things for him to go through, because Melinda was not only his wife, but she was his best friend, and that was his life partner, and he trusted her, you know, second to God, you know, that they had that much of a strong relationship. And now he's left to raise his children, who at the time was 11, 13, and 16. And, you know, he really went through a hard time, but he still managed to keep his faith in God and said that, God, I'm leaning on you right now. And in 2011, he did the song My Testimony, which was a tribute to Melinda, you know, on his album I Win. And I Win, I think, also became a #1 album as well. And like he said, that one thing that stuck out with him in that song was when he sang the line like, I'm so glad I made it through, and that I made it, you know, I made it because of you. And I thought that was really beautiful. And then also another line that he talked about in that song is that when you see me cry, it's a sign I'm still alive. Yeah, and I Win was his 3rd album that went to #1. And then he also talks about how his children were his strength, you know, through everything that he went through, especially losing his wife. You know, his children have been there, you know, and they've had his back. And also another tragic situation was this woman, I think her name was Talika Patrick. She was actually stalking Marvin Sapp. She would, like, you know, she had came to his church a few times, came to his house, and did all kind of stuff. And they actually found her dead in a lake. And people started speculating that Marvin Sapp had something to do with it, which was ludicrous to people who knows him, because that would be the last person that would want to do something like that to anybody. But it turns out when they did their investigation that it was an accidental drowning and it was no foul play. And of course Marvin Sapp had nothing to do with that. But it was just a coincidence that, you know, but, you know, he even said that, you know, I feel sorry for her, and I also feel sorry for her family, because she was obviously mentally ill. And you know, pretty much, you know, the whole investigation into him was immediately dropped. Also, another thing they talked about was that he actually, one of his wife's dreams was to actually have a school dedicated to, you know, to arts, entertainment, and technology, and he has created a school just like that in Grand Rapids. And he said that this is the dream of my wife, and I made sure that her dream was not going to die. And I thought that was very beautiful. So, you know, it was a really remarkable episode. I mean, it was an episode of that you actually saw a man of God, and that regardless of how many storms or trials and tribulations he may have went through, he managed to persevere, he managed to keep his faith, and he managed to keep going. Something that I, myself, am trying to do. You know, regardless of any bad situations you go through, you can't let that in you. You have to use that as a stepping stool to get to somewhere better. And that you have to know that regardless of how bad things get, God will not let you fail. So that's my review, everybody. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you can get notifications every time I drop a video. Like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. And I will be back with another episode of Unsung, or with the next episode of Unsung. And I think the next episode, is going to be on Switch. So I definitely look forward to that. So until then, everybody, take care.